So today we are talking about the paramita of generosity and selfless giving. In Buddhism, there's 6 paramitas, and they are attributes that we cultivate because they help us follow the Eightfold Path. If we cultivate the attribute of generosity, it's the cure for greed. And in this world, we know there's a lot of greed sickness. And it's very easy to get caught up in greed sickness without even realizing it. So one of the things we do is we practice generosity and selfless giving. Now, selfless giving on the spiritual path is one of the most misunderstood practices, because there's this idea that gets floated around in our consciousness, especially in this country. I don't know about other countries, but definitely I've seen it here. I've actually witnessed it in some people, where we think that to be selfless, that we have to give away everything and live in a state of abject poverty, or else we're not doing it right. Like, I had somebody show up once, and they had come from a wealthy family and decided it was time for them to follow the spiritual path. And so he came in and said, I've given away all of my furniture, I sleep on the floor, I've given away most of my clothes, I only have 3 sets of clothes now, and I'm still not happy. and would I like his trust fund? It's like, oh no. It's like, that's very generous, but completely wrong. It would be wrong for me to take that. So I gave them an assignment instead, because, as I said, they grew up wealthy, so they had no idea what it was like to live without money. And they were just, like I said, begging for somebody to take it. Just take it. Because they thought, they misunderstood selfless giving. They thought that's what it meant, was just to give away everything and suffer poverty. And so I gave them an assignment, get a job, and then live only on the money that you earn from that job for at least 6 months. So take your money that you've got and lock it away so you can't get to it. Live only on the money you earn for 6 months. And then, do the practice that you learn here in class, and then check in again, see how you feel about giving away all your money. And it completely shifted their worldview. They suddenly had much greater compassion for the people that they met every day. They suddenly had more drive of what they actually wanted to do. They went back to school. They already had a degree, but then they realized, well, I wasn't really interested, that wasn't doing it for me. So they actually went back to school and found a career that made them happy. And they were able to actually utilize their money and do good things. So selfless giving isn't about making ourselves destitute. Because if we look at that example now, say I did accept all the money, and now this person is destitute. They have no way to support themselves. They are struggling and suffering. And within a few months, there would be bitterness and anger. Might even come back and say, hey, I need that money back. So there would be that awkwardness, which is what I could see. It would create a lot of negative karma for them if I had accepted that money. So I didn't. So when we are practicing this paramita of generosity, we do it from a place of selfless giving. And how do we arrive at a place of selfless giving? Is we first need to figure out what are our needs. What do we need in order to feel supported? What do we need in order to feel like we have extra? And then we can look at that slice of what is extra, and then we can give it away freely. And when we do so, when we do it from that place, then we can actually practice the paramita of generosity in a true way, because we can give away that money or that time or that resource, whatever it might be, without attaching any strings. Like, I'm sure you've all had the experience where, you run into somebody and they need some money. Maybe you know them, so you're like, okay, here's, the $50 or whatever you need. And then they turn around and they spend it on something that you think is frivolous. And now you're upset. You're like, oh, you just blew it. I worked hard for that money, and then you just blew it. Well, guess what? That was not selfless giving. That was giving with strings attached. Because you didn't feel like that $50 was actually extra. If that money was extra and you didn't need it, and you saw that, oh, you actually need it, okay, here. And you give it, and they do with it what they will. That's selfless giving. That's practicing the paramita of generosity. Now, to get to that place, it takes some practice, it takes some work. As I said, first it starts with that introspection of what is it that I actually need? And everyone's needs are different. We tend to fall into this habit of viewing everybody else through our own filter. And we say, well, I need this amount of space, maybe I need this small little apartment, and that's all I need. I don't need any extra furniture. I just need a place to sleep and maybe a closet to hold some clothes, and I only need 3 outfits, and that's fine. And therefore, anybody that has anything beyond that, they don't need it. And that's completely untrue, because we don't know what somebody else needs. What we need has to be very individualized. We have to take an honest look at what we're doing currently, what we want to do in the future. If we're working towards a certain career, then we're going to need certain supports. If we're, say we're a real estate agent, and we need to go show people houses. If we have an unreliable car that's blowing smoke and is all beaten up, and we show up at the first house to show the prospective client the house, and then we're like, okay, let's go look at the next house, and we have them follow us, it's going to have a detrimental impact on their view of us as a realtor. So if you're showing houses, you need a nice car in order to present a certain image. So again, what you need as an individual to support yourself in your life is going to be based on what you need. So this is an exercise in honesty. Sometimes we have an overwhelming desire that just won't go away, and it's just hooked into us hard, and it won't go away until we fulfill that desire. I think it was in Yogananda's book, there was a disciple who just really wanted a beautiful palace. That was his his heart's desire. He just needed this palace. And so when Babaji ordained him, Babaji created this beautiful crystalline palace for him to have his ordination in. Because without that experience of being in that palace, then that student, Lahiri, would have been stuck. It would have been that little, rock that kept him from fully surrendering to the path. And everybody has something. Everybody has something that we need in order to feel supported on the path and in our life. So that's step one, is to start to figure out what that is. And I don't mean step one as in you have to do that first, but that is one of the steps. Another way into practicing generosity is to really look at the things that you enjoy. So maybe there's a beautiful sunset, or you come across just a blooming flower that just makes you ecstatic when you look at it. And in that moment, one of the practices that we can do is, instead of just hoarding that experience for ourselves, we can develop the sincere wish that others also get to experience that beauty. And so in that moment, as we're enjoying the beauty of that flower, or that magic of that sunset, or the taste of some yummy treat, whatever it might be, we just take a moment to cultivate generosity by thinking to ourselves that, I wish deeply that others could also experience this. And that starts to open our heart a little bit. It starts to point us towards generosity. So as we practice and we pay attention to our mind, our core practice of mindfulness, we start to watch where the greed sickness comes in, where we start to feel the scarcity. We start to feel that sense of miserliness, like, this is mine, get away. Because of how my dad was raised, he would often eat with his arm around his food. Because his mother, when she was done eating, she would come and take everybody's plates away, whether you were done or not. So that was a habit that he developed, as he would sit there with his arm guarding his food for many, many years. And it wasn't until he was near the end of his life that he finally relaxed a little bit and didn't feel the need to guard his food. So pay attention for when that arises in you. We all have that. We all have something that we feel like we need to protect. It might be our relationship with another person. Like, don't get close to them. It might be with our home. It might be with our money. It might be with our time. So look at what it is. It might be with bacon. If you eat bacon, like, don't touch my bacon. Your French fries, that's a big one. Don't touch my fries. It's like, but there's lots. But whatever it is, that sudden, that greed that comes over us, that's an opportunity for you to really dive into generosity. So challenge yourself. Again, it's not about denying and putting yourself in a space of poverty, because that will only make the greed sickness worse. That's what I see a lot of people do. It's like they dig themselves deeper and deeper into the hole, because they're like, well, I just got to give everything away and then I'll be happy. And no, renunciation doesn't work that way, because even though you're giving everything away in your mind, you're like, oh, I really want that. Or, oh, he's not using that how I wanted him to. That's not giving. So in those moments where you feel like you need to cling tightly, start with seeing what you actually are enjoying about that experience. If it's the French fries and they taste really good and you really don't want to share them, challenge yourself to say, well, I wish other people could enjoy French fries as much as I am enjoying them right now. And see how that feels. And that develops an aspiration. And you do that enough times, and then maybe the next time you get French fries and you're enjoying them immensely and you're sitting with your friend, you might feel that you have enough, where it's like, okay, you can have a few. Here, have some. Now, the other part of generosity, which people kind of get a little twisted about, is when we do give something away to somebody, we want it to be something that they need, something that they can actually use, something that's helpful for them and not an obstruction for them. So if somebody is on a diet, for example, they're really trying to lose weight, then they've told you, like, I'm really going to lose weight, I'm counting my calories, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing really good, and then you order a big slice of pie and have ice cream dripping all over it, then maybe you don't offer them some. If they ask, that might be different, but you don't say, oh, here, let me order you one too. That would not be generous. Or if you have something that you got that you just don't like, I think we've all had that experience with food. It's like, you take a bite of something, you're like, ew, this is horrible. Here, do you want it? I know I do that to my husband. Here, this is gross. Here, have it. That's not generosity. That's you just trying to get rid of something. So understand the difference. As I said, generosity and selfless giving are tied together. So we can practice, once again, by just noticing the experiences we enjoy and developing that aspiration to share. We can focus on what it is that we need and take inventory and say, oh, you know what, maybe I have 52 sweaters and San Diego doesn't get that cold, so maybe I can give away 10 of them. Or more, or less. Again, depends on where you are. If you're spending every night, maybe you have to work at night and you need to be outside. It gets cold at night, so maybe you need 30 or 40 sweaters. Again, everybody's needs are different, but taking this assessment of what it is that you need to feel supported, to feel whole, so that you can take an honest look at what you have and what is extra, and then give away what's extra. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to go run and empty out your house right now. It's an opportunity to look at where you're clinging and see if you can apply this paramita of generosity and give. And we take it that step further and we observe people. We start to open our heart in compassion. And we look at, well, what is it that they actually need? Sometimes we think that somebody just needs money, but what they actually need is a conversation. Sometimes we think somebody needs a conversation, and what they actually need is some money. So opening ourselves to becoming aware and sensitive to what others actually need in that moment, and then taking our inventory and looking and seeing, oh, I actually have that here. You can take that. And then being able to do it with no strings attached. So that's the other part, as I said before. Really pay attention to when you give, are you really giving? Sometimes we have exchanges where it's a transaction and it's not selfless giving. It's like most people go to work and they expect to get paid. They're not just showing up to selflessly give their skills and time. They're like, excuse me, I need a paycheck. So that would be a transaction, an exchange. But then there's other times where there's what we call the exchange of gratitude, which is what we do here. Here at this little Trikaya temple, it's an exchange of gratitude. I and the other teachers are happy to offer Dharma and teachings, and we do it freely. We don't expect anything because it makes me happy. I hope it makes the other teachers happy when they offer teachings. And if people benefit from that and they enjoy it, then they can participate in the exchange of gratitude by donating either time or money. And that allows this cycle to continue. But we're not set up as a transactional business. Before we became nonprofits, I think there was moments when people tried to make it that way, and something in me, it wouldn't click. I'd probably be a lot wealthier if I did, but it didn't click for me, because this is something bigger. It has to do with holding this doorway to enlightenment open in this world, and one of the ways we do that is through this paramita of generosity. Is, as I said, generosity is the antidote to greed. And we can't force feed it to anyone. We see so much greed happening in this world that's creating so much suffering, but we can't force somebody to be generous. It doesn't work. It just pushes people into that that sense of being destitute. They could have all the resources in the world and still feel poor, still feel like they don't have enough, which is what we see in a lot of people. But instead, if we live this happy, bright life of selfless giving, we become an example of this paramita of generosity. And we never have to point it out. It just happens through our actions, through our very being. And even through our silent wishes of enjoying a sunset and saying, oh wow, I wish everyone could enjoy this beach and the sunset, could enjoy this beauty, and having that sincere wish, and it does something to the whole fabric of creation. So, are there any questions? Yes.
So I understood the example of food and money, how we might be looking at it wrong or not realizing there's enough fries, or I want everyone to feel the fries, or giving money without strings attached. You said home. In what ways might we be hung up or not generous or not selflessly giving in regards to that?
In regards to what? Your home?
To home. You said
Oh.
it could be money or food or like our home.
Mm-hmm. So we might feel very protective of our home, where we don't want anybody to come in because we have a certain insecurity, where nobody's welcome there. And people, again, can overcompensate and harm themselves by saying, well, okay, anybody and everybody can come in. And then their home gets overrun, and then now they feel deprived because they have no privacy, they have no control over their own space. So then we go to the other extreme, where nobody's ever allowed at my house. Just stay out. And that becomes a type of greed, where it's just this, you've marked off this territory, and this is mine. No, you can never ever come in. So to counteract that, we can look around our home and experience our home and have the sincere wish that others also have a home that makes them feel supported and secure. And as we do that in a very sincere way, we might start to open up and realize that, oh, you know what, this one particular person, maybe they can come over and just enjoy my home with me. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's people that will get these, palaces, giant homes, and then they're like, nobody can come in. They'll hire guards and build up big walls, and nobody can come in. Nobody can touch anything. It's like their house is a museum that nobody's allowed to visit. And it's really sad when you think about it. But by practicing having that sincere wish that other people could enjoy this the way I enjoy it, it starts to melt that block, that greed sickness. So, good question. So, are there any more comments or anything anybody wants to add?
I had a similar experience, but with a family member, and it's not that she didn't want anybody to come into her home, but she was super OCD. I mean, like diagnosis-wise,
Mm-hmm.
and like if you touched something, she would just accuse you of being rude and just shame you and stuff like that. So I was never welcome in there, but yet she offered it to me. So
you got to feel the receiving end of greed
Yes.
sickness. So. And that's a good thing to point out, because when we're feeling somebody else's greed sickness, it triggers our own. And then it makes us, want to put up our barriers and mark our territory. And so in that moment, if we can soften a little bit and try to find what it is that we are enjoying right now. Like maybe, they had a snow globe that you really liked playing with, and then every time you touched it, they're like, no, don't have fingerprints. Instead of reacting negatively to their distress, you can just silently be like, oh, I really wish they could enjoy that snow globe the way that I enjoyed it. And hold that thought. And that can make a difference over time. It's not instantaneous. We want to see, like, I do this and now you change. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. That's just another level of attachment. I see a hand up, so go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Oh, there's an echo. around money, um, like I totally understand that like when you give anything, what happens after has nothing to do with you, especially if you are truly giving it. Um, what about an instance, because that's something that I'm experiencing, and it's not necessarily just money, but it's usually money. Um, when a person keeps asking to borrow money, and I don't know how to explain, it's like you are trying to give selflessly, but you're beginning to experience some resentment because it feels like the person is taking advantage. Um, I know that you can't control the other person, but in that instance, would you stop giving to them because it's building resentment, or figure out how to deal with, like, kind of figure out why you're getting resentful?
Well, I would do both. You know, it's not an either or. You want to look at what is actually triggering the resentment. It could be that a part of you is seeing that giving them the money over and over again is actually creating harm for them. Because sometimes we get into relationships where we start to enable harmful behavior. Like if somebody's just taking the money and they're going and buying drugs or things that are hurting them, then it's not good to give them money. Or if they're just using the money that you're giving them as a way to not deal with their inability to manage their own budget, and they're just bypassing that whole learning because they're like, oh, I'll just get it from so and so, then that's creating harm for that person. So you never want to give somebody just like the big giant piece of pie with all the drippy ice cream on it. You don't want to give that or money or anything to somebody that might create harm. That's not generosity. That's enabling harm. So in those cases, you want to stop giving. And then if it's just pure resentment that's coming up, we want to look at that and say, oh, well, maybe that money or time or whatever it is that I gave, I really didn't have that extra. Maybe there was something I wanted to buy. And I see the resentment a lot in terms of time. When people give time to people, that can create a lot of resentment because maybe they had their own projects they wanted to do, and then friend calls up and says, oh, can you help me with this thing, or can you talk to me for 6 hours? And you say yes because you feel compassion for them, but then you're not compassionate for yourself. So does that make sense?
Yes. And maybe there's like super subconscious strings attached of maybe I didn't necessarily expect her to use the money in a certain way, but expected them to learn how to not need to borrow money repeatedly.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole enabling aspect of life is really tricky because we're relational beings, so we're always interacting with each other, and sometimes we create really destructive habits, and for that habit to continue, it takes two people. And to be the one to cut it off and say, you know what, I keep giving you money and you keep digging a deeper hole for yourself, so I'm going to have to cut this off. If it's somebody that you want to continue a relationship with, now we're into, you have to modify the parameters of that relationship, which requires a lot of communication, and that can be very uncomfortable. So be strong and be clear. with most, definitely with yourself first, understand like, okay, I've reached my limit of what I'm okay with, and it's hurting me to see you hurt yourself, so I'm not going to continue this type of relationship anymore. And, that can be challenging, but it's very empowering. It allows us to grow, and it gives the other person the opportunity to grow as well. So, very, very good question. So we should meditate before we run out of time. Very good questions.